talk about the expectations of software versus hardware. And if you open it's a Saturday, you open your Chase online banking app and it says, hey, the app is down, come back for maintenance, come back tomorrow. You don't switch banks. You don't go to Wells Fargo, you just close the app and move on with your day. But what if your microwave said that? Sorry, I can't heat your food today. Come back tomorrow. You threw out your microwave. So
hello and welcome to Between Two COOs, where phenomenal chief operating officers come to share their knowledge, advice, and crazy stories. I'm your host, Michael Koenig, and I'm excited to welcome our guest, Dave Weiss, founder, president, and chief operating officer at Hatch, a company on a mission to help everyone sleep better. Hatch products like Hatch Restore combine a sound machine, sunrise alarm, smart light, meditation app, and of course, the alarm clock, all into one smart sleep assistant. Hatch was featured on Shark Tank in 2016 and has since gone on to help over 500,000 people get restorative sleep. Prior to founding Hatch with his wife, Anne, Dave spent 6 years as the Chief Technology Officer and SVP of Product Management at BabyCenter. Welcome, Dave. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to have you on.
thanks for having me.
Did I do Hatch justice there?
Absolutely, very well done. Though we're over 2 million homes now, so the info is a little bit dated, but still going strong. Lots of people sleeping.
Fantastic. 2 million now. That's quite a remarkable achievement. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you're currently Chief Operating Officer, but you have a technical background as a CTO, which is a bit of a rare breed. How'd you end up as COO? What was your path?
So I started as an engineer, and I think I was a medium engineer, but a good explainer of what engineers do. And so I kept getting called into the meetings to actually translate, wait, what are you guys doing? How long is it going to take? And so that was a little bit of my path to engineering leadership. And then through some twists and turns, I really always wanted to be in the room. Back early in my career, it was very much a product came up with the requirements and just sort of threw them over the fence to engineering. And I really wanted to be in that room where they were coming up with the solutions for the consumer. I had an opportunity at BabyCenter to take over product and marketing and design, and I loved it. And so expanded beyond the sort of traditional CTO role and took over a bunch of different functions and got to spend time with one foot in many different rooms.
That's so interesting, especially the part about being able to translate and summarize what engineers are talking about into a language that non-engineers can actually comprehend. Is there a secret? I think we could all know. Love to know.
I spent a little bit of time as a high school teacher early in my career. I actually sort of switched to teaching high school and then came back. And it was really hard to explain math. I was teaching math and computer science, and you've got 16-year-old there who's fidgety and struggling to understand the material. And I just made it my mission to say it again and say it again and say it again in a way where this is sort of rehearsing that someone who really had no context could understand it. And that seems to translate pretty well into trying to take technical concepts like IoT and have, the rest of the organization understand it.
So this is very funny. Essentially, treat everyone like a high school student, which is quite similar to what my head of people operations says. Her secret is to treat everyone like a kindergartner and explain it. So you're actually giving us more credit, though Kate is phenomenal, and I think she only gives me that advice versus everyone else. So I have some work to do, clearly. So the COO role, it isn't one size fits all. The responsibilities can range from G&A to finance to go-to-market, sometimes all three. How have you divided up your areas of responsibility now at Hatch? And is there a technical component to what you're doing, given your background?
Absolutely. So when we were a smaller company, it was a little bit of everything, including manufacturing and Hatch is the first company uh, that I've worked at that makes physical products. So this was all new. It was a ton of learning. My co-founder Ann and I spent a lot of time in Pete's Coffee trying to figure things out before we actually launched the company, and so in different iterations, it was customer support. It was all sorts of things that I'm not at all trained to do, but that's what you do when you're 5 or 10 person company. As we've evolved and we've hired, I ran marketing, and it was easy to spend a few $1,000s a month and sell product. But once you get to the point where you're spending real large sums of money, you need a CMO. And so we've hired experts in those functions. And primarily, I spend my time with the product development team, which is product engineering, design, and QA. And we're the team that builds stuff. And that's sort of our current iteration because we've hired experts in other places, and selfishly, it's the part that I enjoy the most. So that's been my path, and that's how we're defining it now. But I've probably spent time running every department in our company at some time or another.
Got it. And starting a company, founding a company, having any sort of success is a remarkable achievement. And I would say, at least from my perspective as a software guy, doing that with a hardware product is also quite noteworthy. Can you tell me a little bit about those beginnings of building a hardware product as a first time entrant into hardware and having the capital to do that? Like, these are very sort of capital intensive and R&D intensive ventures.
I am very fortunate in that regard because my co-founder, my wife, had started a company earlier before we met, and had a successful exit, and had a very supportive venture firm who said, "Hey, you just tell us what you want to do next." And so, from a capital perspective, we were in a great place, and True Ventures, which was our sort of main backer, was also the money behind first investor in Ring and Peloton, and so they at least knew what they were getting into. They said, "Hey, make sure you account for the fact that one of these tools you build, you're gonna have to throw it away." We said, "Wait, does that happen?" And so they were a great investor, super knowledgeable. I think when I was in software, I looked at hardware as just a new problem to solve, which I often wonder, had I known then what I know now about how difficult hardware is, and specifically IoT. I'm on the fence as to whether or not we would be talking today. When I interview some folks, specifically some engineers, we talk about the expectations of software versus hardware. And if you open it's a Saturday, you open your Chase online banking app, and it says, "Hey, the app is down. Come back for maintenance. Come back tomorrow." You don't switch banks. You don't go to Wells Fargo. You just close the app and move on with your day. But what if your microwave said that? "Sorry, I can't heat your food today. Come back tomorrow." You throw out your microwave. So it's the heightened level of expectations in, frankly, a market that from an IoT perspective that's fairly immature. All of that combined together makes for a really, really challenging job.
Especially in the IoT, right? Because you're not just building a new invention here. You also have to build in compatibility with mobile devices, for instance, right? So there's a whole other complex layer of innovation that you have to account for, in addition to the innovative new product that you've produced for improving sleep.
Absolutely. I mean, environmental factors, things that you don't have to worry about when you build websites or apps, environmental factors like interference in someone's home, constant updating of other software, router software, 450 versions of Android. So, you have quite a test lab when you're doing this, and there are always things that you never find in QA that actually make it out into the world. I've spent my share of time actually driving over to customers' homes and saying, "Hey, would you mind if we wired this up and tried to figure out what was going on?"
That's a great story of being on the ground, especially when founding companies, and I'm sure you have plenty others where things have been a little bit non-predictable as far as that goes. I mean, you're talking about driving around to people's houses, getting them plugged in, and getting them set up. That's pretty remarkable. Other instances where you're thinking back and you're like, gosh, I can't believe I did that.
I mean, we've had moments where we've had 1,000 units to unbox and take off the bottom ring, unscrew, swap out a part, put them back in, and we just did it. We got a bunch of tables and a bunch of pizza, and leaned on my kids and some of their friends, and those are the moments where you wonder, do other companies do this? But having talked to some other founders, I think everyone has their moments like
Oh, absolutely. I delivered phones in a truck.
that.
But that's a story for another time. So tell me, you were on Shark Tank in 2016. You mentioned that you've since gone on to raise money from True Ventures, and they're a phenomenal firm, especially in light of all of the hardware expertise that they have. Generally, raising institutional capital for hardware products can be challenging and daunting. You all kind of skipped that part by having that prior success. Can you tell us a little bit about what the experience is like raising those subsequent rounds now that you have a product in market that you have to deliver, that you have sales figures to show, things of that nature?
Absolutely. It is always challenging to raise capital. I find that there's very much a what happens to be in vogue at the moment, which valuations 10, 50 times just fly at people who've got significantly less revenue. The consumer space is challenging. The hardware space is challenging. And we started with, helping babies and new parents. And again, that market is traditionally challenging. We are now, sleep for your whole family. So we started as Hatch Baby, and now we're Hatch. So all along the way, I feel like it's been a little bit of an uphill climb, and I've got some friends who make some B2B software where it's like they open their mailbox and there's checks just showing up at their doorstep. But we have consistently proven over and over again that the business has legs, and we find people who are believers. I mean, there's some amazing. You look at Apple. Apple is, they make hardware, right? We shouldn't be afraid of hardware. And fortunately, successes like Peloton show people that actually purpose-built hardware and a full surround sound experience is really what the consumer wants. From when we do the fundraising, fortunately, my co-founder is she takes the lead. She's amazing. That's sort of her gig, and I come in for the second or third round of conversations. And usually when I come in, my job is to sit there and be quiet for most of the time, and she talks, and then I have to say one or two really intelligent sounding things at the right moment. So that's our yin and yang. And sometimes people look over and they, does he ever say anything?
We'd love to hear from this guy. No, no, no. He's just here for show. That's fantastic. Now, you mentioned your co-founder, and founding and building a company is a roller coaster ride in and of itself. Plenty of highs, plenty of lows. In other words, it can be insanely stressful. Now, your business partner is also your wife. How has that ride been? And careful with your response because she's going to be listening.
We talk about this all the time. In fact, we have other married couples who reach out to us and say, "Hey, we're thinking of starting a company," and we give them the honest picture. It is not. I sort of liken it a little bit to the journey of having kids together. It stretches you in a ton of different ways. It adds, it takes away space and air out of the room. It tests you, and in the end, you reflect on these moments of shared experience that a lot of people don't get with their spouse. I mean, this moment where we were on Shark Tank together, the moment where we launch our first booth at CES, or we're sitting next to each other unscrewing products. The those lasting memories, I think, are really, really important. And I tend to think that the stress and the sniping and the bad behavior that we all do, that sort of stuff melts away in retrospect. In the moment, it's terrible and painful and difficult. We have more than one CEO coach, and we both have our own therapists, and we try to remain emotionally healthy because this journey is a tough one, regardless of whether or not your spouse is your co-founder. But it's certainly not for everyone. But I couldn't imagine being here and not having shared it with my wife.
Great answer. You're not going to be in the doghouse.
Well practiced.
For sure, for sure. Now, what I'm really interested in is understanding, I mean, that dynamic is so unique. And particularly from a leadership perspective, you have a successful company here, 80 plus employees. CEO is your wife, COO is the husband. Does that ever come up? And do you ever have to kind of set that aside, or do you try and sweep it under the rug, or is it just this is who we are, and like all founders, we're going to have some challenges here and there? What's that like?
I think that in the beginning, there's always some trepidation from external parties like investors. But as you achieve more success, and you've been doing this for a while, and this isn't our first startup, and they, they sort of look at it now, and it's a non-factor. Internally, you'd probably have to ask our the rest of our executive team, but we try to be really mindful, though it doesn't always work, of when we're in a discussion, when we're at work, treating each other the way we would treat any other co-founder. One of our CEO coaches says smart people with the same facts often, most often come to the same conclusions. And so when there's friction, we really try to step back and try to put some boundaries on the discussion and challenge ourselves to write some prose and to try to understand what facts are we missing? What facts are we missing that lead us one way or the other? And when it comes to gut, we have those moments where one of us just needs to disagree and commit.
Sure. Well, and that's the key there, disagree and commit, isn't it? Thanks to Amazon for giving us that. I think it was Amazon, wasn't it? In terms of the leadership aspect, setting aside the relationship with your co-founder, just in terms of the leadership aspect, how do you keep the troops feeling confident and happy when there can be so much uncertainty, especially if you're pulling in hardware, which has a whole different host of challenges? What's your secret? And what have you learned from your leadership coaches?
We are wildly transparent. I find that the sort of fear of the unknown is stronger than really understanding the facts. We are big communicators. We meet with our team really often. We meet with our entire company weekly, and we're very transparent about what's going on. When we're doing a fundraise, we show them the deck. When we have our financials come in at the end of the quarter, we show them our financials. And it produces a little bit of comfort and discomfort that, it's at first, if you come from a really large company, it might be uncomfortable, but you get acclimated pretty quickly because you realize that you are an owner of the business, and this is how businesses work. And we certainly have our moments of ups and downs. From who we are as humans, I'm very steady, and so I think people find some comfort in the fact that I don't get rattled very often. And my wife is very excitement and energy just pours off of her. So when we have something new, people are just sponges to, she makes whatever we're doing sound super exciting. And so that's a little bit of our sort of personal brands. But I think I think sort of living through those moments. I also think there's some old school illusions about sort of the startup roller coaster, or the startup you're going to have to work 24 hours a day, or you're working in your garage, and the comfort of the big company. And more the jobs are fairly similar. And once you reach a certain size, I do think the early days, the first 5, 10 people, it requires a certain level of jumping in with 2 feet. And you look for people who that's fun for them to do that. Where you say, hey, we have to produce our first retail box. And out of your 10 people, you have 6 of them raise their hand and say, I'll do it. And 0 of them have ever made a retail box, right? You hire the people who are excited about a new challenge, as opposed to, oh, wait, that's not my area of expertise. I might fail. That's the composition of folks that do well at that stage.
How do you screen for that? How do you find that? How do you dig down and find the people who are just ready to jump in with both feet?
We went through this exercise, and really it wasn't until we were about 40 people where we were going remote and growing really fast, and we wrote down our values, and we were very intentional, and it took a very long time, and it was the stuff that makes us unique. It was not, traditional, we believe in customers. It was very, very much the stuff that makes us unique. And we've brought that to life within our company, and it's part of our recruiting process. So every interviewer takes a value, and reads the value and talks about examples about, hey, this is how this manifests at Hatch. How does this resonate with you? And I found that not only is it good at screening out folks who might not be a good fit, but it really attracts folks that are, super talented, and look at one company versus another company and say, you know what, these people are really intentional about who they are and the kind of culture that they want to create, and this is what I want.
Do you mind sharing those values?
Sure. Um, the first one is, we call pick up a shovel. And pick up a shovel is exactly that moment of the retail box. It is biased toward action. It is step forward. It is not looking over at the ditch and saying, wow, somebody should really dig something there. It's walking over and picking up a shovel and just starting to dig. And it's who we are. I still fire up my drill press and drill holes in the back of products to get access to program reports. Like, this is what we do. And we're a very roll up our sleeves kind of company. The second one is we believe in wet paint. And again, we try to use sort of these visceral metaphors. You can see it. And so it's become a little bit of a meme in our company where people will put like wet paint in their Figma with like dripping paint, because not everyone is comfortable sharing early. And if you have a creative background, sometimes you're used to sort of the big reveal, and that's not how we work. We create a safe space for people, and we really encourage people to share. Our last few, and I won't go through all of them, but our last few are really about humans. One of them specifically is humans over process. And again, with all of these values, they can be misinterpreted, but if you really understand the spirit, this is the kind of company that I want to wake up every Monday morning and come to work at. And what human is over process means is success is built on the backs of human relationships. And human relationships can overcome the gap in any process. But even the best process will not overcome a gap in human relationships. And so we want to know each other and know each other's kids' names and laugh together and spend time together. And our last few values really are all about people. We make a big bet on people, that it's okay to be a human, and success comes from knowing your teammates. I often tell people this story about the U.S. men's Olympic basketball team. Olympics just happened, and they got together, and all these all stars, and guess what? They lost to Hungary. in an exhibition game. And there's a moment where what are your odds if you're hungry? 1,000 to 1? Well, it's because they didn't know how to play as a team. They didn't know each other. They didn't trust each other. And through that time, through their Olympic journey, that they figured out those things, and they wound up winning the gold. And we are not going to be the USA basketball team losing to Hungary. I don't care how many talented people we have. The value of team is so much higher than individual talent.
So, how do you build that? You mentioned that you've gone remote. How do you build that camaraderie and that sense of belonging, that sense of team and understanding?
I'd say the first and biggest challenge is creating space. So whether or not it's a team room where people can just join, or one-on-one meetings, or making sure that when somebody is doing onboarding, that they've got 30 people that they need to do one-on-ones with, right? It's and a ton of them have nothing to do with their job function, but it's just you need to know people and they need to know you in order to be successful here. We try the same kinds of experiments that every company does as they're going remote and trying to figure it out. I'm much more an in-person, walk to Starbucks and get to know people kind of human. But I think it started with realizing that some of our best and brightest were A-plus students. They wanted to be as efficient with their time as possible, and their efficiency got in the way, of really getting to know people. And this is a lesson I learned when I was a teacher. I spent 15 minutes of my Monday morning class talking to people about their weekend and asking them about their, their tennis match, or just generally things they did. And I shared a lot myself, and we just normalized that conversation. And guess what? The rest of the 30 minutes, everyone was really connected and zoomed into what we were talking about, as opposed to saying, all right, take out your books and let's open them. And that's what, that's one of the lessons that we learned, is that we have to create space for that conversation, especially when we're remote.
So, you can't just rely on hoping that it happens by creating a Slack channel where people can share pictures of cats. It's more active where you go hands on and you yourself are participating and setting that example.
Absolutely. We have, I encourage everybody on our leadership team to have a list of folks that they're meeting with. And it's not just the people that you have as your direct reports. Now, you don't need to meet with everybody every week. You just can't do that. There aren't enough hours. But should 3 months go by and you not talk to anyone on the marketing team? Like, absolutely not. Right. So be intentional about it. If it's not something you would naturally do and think, hey, I wonder how Katie's doing. I haven't talked to her in a while. Be intentional about it. Say, I'm going to meet with these people. These are my directs. I'm going to meet with them every week. I'm going to meet with these people once a month. I'm going to meet with these people every 6 weeks. And you create this sort of rotation where you at least get some one-on-one time with folks. And you also have to participate in, I've been known to just put a Zoom link in our random channel in Slack and say, hey, anyone else eating lunch? I really want to normalize just people saying hello, people talking to each other, people doing that. And I think once you're intentional about that activity, and people realize, oh, actually this isn't just fun for fun's sake. The business, we are a better company because of these relationships. It winds up being a virtuous cycle.
Going from you and your co-founder, you and your wife, to now 80 people and 2 million units sold. What are some, and I'm sure there are plenty of these lessons, but what's one thing about that growth, about that scale, a lesson that you wish you had known, or just a piece of advice that you would pass along to another COO going through that growth journey?
I think I have heard many times before, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And really try to enjoy the moment as it is now. There's always something special to take out of the size your company is now. Sure, you have a bunch of difficult things coming up, you have a bunch of craziness, but I often go and I'll read some Amazon reviews, or I'll look at some NPS comments, and there's a human on the other side of that who we've helped. Probably some humans who are upset too. And, I think, my advice would be to find sort of enjoyment and gratitude in the moment that you're in now, and realize that it's a journey. And as you get bigger, it's just different. There are different moments of stress now. And I look back, and there are lots of things that I'm glad I don't do because I wasn't qualified to do it. I'm glad we have an expert there, but some of them I miss. And so just really trying to be present and enjoy the moment. In terms of the journey of growth, I really think the key for us has been our values and transparency. Those were things that I'm not sure I knew earlier in my journey. We just did them because it was who we were. And at some point, as we started to grow and we felt like things were maybe not quite going in the right direction, we realized, well, what was the missing secret sauce? It was that moment of us being in the office and getting to talk to each other and getting to know each other. And so we became intentional about that. And that's been the real key to growing and still being a place where I want to come to work every morning.
You have such an emphasis on human connections and on the people part. And what I'm taking away from this is if you invest in that, it doesn't matter what the challenges are that you're going to face. You've got a team that's together that's going to rebound from losing to Hungary and go on to win the gold.
Absolutely. We also have very few regrettable losses. And there are some people who have been here for a very long time and are extremely talented. And I think they feel like there's a little bit of an element of it's a company, but it's also a family. And I think that's what keeps them here. It's certainly what keeps me here.
Fantastic. Well, Dave, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people go to learn more about Hatch and keep up with you?
Hatch.co. Sleep for your entire family.
I love it. There you have it, everyone. Hatch.co. Well, thank you very much for listening to Between Two COOs. I'm your host, Michael Koenig, and a very special thank you to our guest, Dave Weiss, for joining us. Tune in next time for our next COO chat on Between Two COOs, and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Just visit between2coos.com for more. And if you have a minute, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and tell others about the show so they can get great advice from phenomenal chief operating officers. Thanks for listening, and until next time, so long.